I think it's no secret who samurai are. Especially after the recent Ghost of Tsushima, and probably you all also know about the existence of Bushido. It is also the book of Hagekure hidden in the foliage. This is such a samurai code, a practical and spiritual guide for a true warrior. A whole storehouse of samurai wisdom. For example, it says that a samurai should be brave, strong, determined, courteous and strive for a noble death. But there are also such, to put it mildly, strange quotes. I would even say other stories, after reading which I decided that I simply had to film them. I will not change almost anything in the text, but I will just read it exactly as the author wrote. Sit back, it will be fun. But I advise the faint of heart to refrain, because after all, samurai instructive stories are very bloody. Let's get started. Master of Stealth. Once on Kano, Makunasuka boarded a small ship to take a walk along the Smida River and enjoy the evening coolness. But there was a scoundrel on the ship who began to rudely mock the passengers. When the scoundrel came to the side to urinate, Makunasuka imperceptibly cut off his head, and it fell into the river. So that people would not see this, he quickly covered the body with things that came to hand. Then he told the captain, no one should know about this. Swim to the upper reaches of the river and bury the body, and I will pay you well for it. The captain did as the Makuna bitch ordered. But in the lagoon where the body was buried, he cut off the captain's head. They say no one found out about it, except for one young man, a sodomite who was engaged in prostitution on the ship. Makunasuke pointed out to him the captain's body and said, this man was also a man, you need to learn to chop when you are still young. After that, the young man cut up the corpse once, so he did not tell about what happened afterwards. I dare say that the samurai of those times were still those clay men. For example, Ihara Saikaku wrote the well-known lines, a teenager without an older lover is like a woman without a husband. But what you can't take away from the samurai is that they stick like tanks. Do you know who else is rushing like tanks? Tanks. Yes, I understand that from every second YouTube channel you have already been offered to play World of Tanks, register and get a nimble tank for a brisk start. And what if I say that only now you can get 7 premium tanks at once, such as the BT-7 artillery and the Soviet T-29, which have lethal guns and good speed. And all because World of Tanks celebrates its first round anniversary, 10 years, which means that potatoes are put down. Register using the link in the description and get 7 premium tanks at once. In addition, in battles you can earn another premium tank of the 6th level of 46. And that's 8 tanks. But happiness can't last forever, so have time to pick up a bag of gifts before the 12th of October. Hurry up, the link is in the description. A bag of rice. Before Haku lived in Kiru Sachiberu. His son's name was Garabi. One day, while carrying a bag of rice, Garabi met Ronin, a master of Kumashira sake, named an Inamura Kunai. They had a quarrel about some long-standing disagreements, and Garabi hit Kunai with a bag. A fight ensued, during which Garabi pushed Kunai into a ditch and returned home. For a long time, Kunai shouted a threat after the departing Garabi, but then he also returned home, where he told his older brother Naimon about everything. The two of them went to Garabi with the intention of taking revenge. When they reached Garabi's house, it turned out that the door was slightly ajar. Garabi was waiting for them outside the door with a drawn sword. Unaware of this, Naimon entered and Garabi hit him. Naimon received a deep wound, but leaning on his sword, he left the house. Then Kunai burst into the house and hacked to the father of Iman, Dahaka's son-in-law, who was sitting near the hearth. After that, Dahaku and his wife managed to take away the iron sword. Tunei began to apologize. I have achieved my goal, he said, please return the sword to me, and my brother and I will go home. But when Dahaku returned the sword to him, Kunai rushed at him and cut his neck in half. After that, they crossed swords with Garabi again and fought on equal terms until Kunai cut off the coffin's hand. After that, Kunai, also quite wounded, shouldered Naimon and headed home. But Naimon died on the way. Garabi had a lot of wounds, and although he managed to stop the bleeding, he died the next day from drinking some water. Dahaku's wife had several fingers chopped off. Dahaku's spine was severed in the neck area. Since the throat remained intact, his head hung forward. Supporting his head with his hand, Dahaku went to the surgeon. The surgeon's treatment was as follows. First, he smeared Dahaku's jaw with a tincture of oleoresin in oil and tied it with Chinese nettle fibers. Then he attached a rope to the top of his head and tied it to the crossbar so that the head would not fall while he sewed up the wound. And then he told Dahaku to lie down and covered his body with rice so that he could not move. For 3 days Dahaku never lost consciousness and did not change the position of his body. He didn't even drink ginseng at the counter. They say that only when his hemorrhoids made themselves felt on the 3rd day, he took a little painkiller. Eventually, his bones healed and he made a full recovery. I remind you that all these stories are presented as instructive wisdom, but what exactly these stories could teach samurai and I would be happy to discuss in the comments. Therefore, write your versions in the comments about these great philosophical stories. Well, if there are 150,000 likes, I will do the second part. Well, that's it for today, don't get sick, and see you again.